Alrighty, I think we're going to have, folks are going to still be trickling in, maybe one or two, but it's definitely time to get started. So everybody, welcome to helping to meet our 60 by 30 goals through boosting career and technical education. We have a great panel right here sitting over to my right, and so I'd like to go a little bit out of the usual order by introducing our panel before I deliver my opening remarks. Trevor McGuire, by the way, with TPPF's Center for Higher Education. So starting immediately to my right is Dr. Michael Reeser, Chancellor and CEO of the Texas State Technical College System. Reeser leads the only statewide two-year technical college system with 10 campuses across the state of Texas. Prior to being appointed Chancellor in 2010, Dr. Reeser served TSTC in various roles, including Chief Financial Officer, College President, and Dean of Instruction, and under his leadership, TSTC has become well known as an innovator by applying proven business performance approaches to higher education operations. Please help me welcome Chancellor Reeser. To Chancellor Reeser's left, we have Dr. Richard Rhodes, President and CEO of Austin Community College District. Since joining the ACC District in 2011, Dr. Rhodes has worked to improve pathways into higher education, strengthen awareness of the community college mission, and give students the tools to accomplish their educational, professional, and personal goals. Prior to joining ACC, Dr. Rhodes served as president of El Paso Community College for 10 years and as vice president of business services at Salt Lake City Community College for 7 years. His professional associations include the American Association of Community Colleges 21st Century Commission on the Future of Community Colleges. Dr. Rhodes is a board member of the Texas Student Success Council and a board member of the Texas Workforce Investment Council and past chair of the Texas Association of Community Colleges. Please help me welcome Dr. Rhodes. And at the end of our table here, we have Representative Jarvis Johnson. Representative Johnson attended Texas Southern University, where despite his age, he offered himself as a role model and source of support for other young people at the university. Johnson's numerous contributions as a student were recognized, and he later received the Texas Southern University President's Award. In 2005, Representative Johnson was elected to the Houston City Council to serve District B, which made him one of the youngest council members in history. During his first year in the Texas House, Representative Johnson was appointed to serve on the House Urban Affairs Committee, addressing problems and issues particularly affecting our state's metropolitan areas and all matters pertaining to the creation, organization, powers, government, and finance for the state's various and diverse municipalities. Please help me welcome Representative Johnson. And I've begun today by introducing our esteemed panel because I want to illustrate something about the issue that we're going to be discussing today. Now, as you've just heard me describe, there are decades of experience of public service sitting here to my right, and yet not one of the gentlemen sitting here to my right is qualified to perform air traffic control, nor are any of the, unless I'm mistaken, nor do they meet even the minimum requirements, again, unless I'm mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, for performing underwater steel fabrication or photovoltaic cell installation. Important stuff. Come on, guys. Now, we all recognize that this is true, but an issue with the dialogue concerning the need to meet our Texas 60 by 30 goals today would consider our panelists today overqualified for those roles that I just mentioned. Now, a brief explanation of what we mean when we talk about our 60 by 30 goals. This is the definition of the new 15-year plan for Texas higher education begun in 2015. And the goal is that by the year 2030, among working Texans between the ages of 25 and 34, 60% or more will have some sort of post-secondary credential. Now, a lot of folks hear post-secondary credential and they think four-year degree. And even those who perhaps consider two-year credentials will think, well, if we could just get students four-year degrees and graduate degrees and PhDs, then so much more the better. We're here today to discuss the fact that even if 100% of the Texas workforce in 2030 had bachelor's degrees, employers would still be struggling to find qualified employees for some of the most vital jobs in our state's economy. What we call those jobs are middle skills jobs. And honestly, I hate the term. It's a misnomer. We understand what we mean when we talk about low skill jobs, and that's the definition for jobs that require a high school degree or less. We've decided to call high skills jobs those jobs that require a 4-year degree or more. Any job that requires a post-secondary credential or 2-year degree, but not necessarily a 4-year degree, master's, PhD, we call middle skills jobs. And this leads some folks to think that if you have qualification for a high skills job, you are overqualified for a middle skills job. And we know that that's not true. We know that it doesn't matter how good of an engineer you are, or how many engineers we have in this state, if we don't have people who know how to operate welding equipment underwater, we can't drill offshore. I mean, that welding underwater. It doesn't matter how many folks we have in think tanks that are developing the energy sources of the future. If we don't have folks who know how to install photovoltaic cells that are used in solar energy, people that know how to assemble those windmills out in West Texas, it doesn't matter that we theoretically understand how they work. We don't have access to that energy. Now, the good news is that there's a bipartisan effort that spans all sorts of educational institutions, that spans the public and private sector, folks that have all come together that understand that this is an issue that needs addressing, and it is being addressed. But there is still this issue with narrative that CTE, that 2-year degrees, that technical degrees are somehow a consolation prize, or somehow well, you didn't make it into the 4-year institution, or you didn't go to the 4-year institution, and so, let's have this for these students here. And there's an issue in the narrative where we talk about, well, yeah, we're always going to need plumbers, we're always going to need welders, we're always going to need electricians, which is true and which is covered under this area. But I want for everybody in this room to adopt and enter into the mindset, if you haven't already, before our panelists begin to talk about the details of how we're going to address Texas's 60 by 30 needs, by understanding that there is a fundamental problem with the way that even supporters of career and technical education discuss it in relation to 4-year degrees. This is not a consolation prize. This is not something that is any way underneath bachelor degree attainment, master's degree attainment. This is a crucial component of the economy of the future and something that drastically needs to be addressed. The good news being that it is being addressed, and I'll stop talking so you can hear our panelists discuss exactly how that's being done. And so please help me welcome our first panelist, Chancellor Reeser.
Thank you very much, Travis. Thanks. Well, Travis said, you know what, if you go out of this session not hearing what Travis said, I'm going to repeat a lot of what he said, so you're going to really get a chance to hear it twice. The second thing I have to say is I apologize for the formatting on this slide. This is an example of conflicting operating systems. These slides were prepared on a Macintosh, and clearly the machine back there is a PC, and so I predict we'll have other slides that have problems like this one right here. So the 60 by 30 plan is a great plan. It's multifaceted, contains more variables than the plans of the past. It promotes all the various sectors of higher ed. It's student-focused as well as institutional-focused. That is a key factor. And then, above all, the genius of the plan is it contains employment relevance measurements. This is really important. So let's look a bit closer at it. Well, first let me make this statement. There has never been a better time in Texas from the standpoint of the higher ed strategic plan for post-secondary CTE to prosper. And the reason is the co-board and all of the stakeholders they brought together to write this plan did a great job of doing it. However, by itself, this plan won't solve the problem. It will take a lot of policy consideration to go forward. So if we look at the plan, you can see what that is. The left column is the closing the gaps, and the right column is the new 60 by 30 plan. And what you'll see is the new 60 by 30 takes some of the key goals, that is the overarching volume of more people getting into college and the overall volume of more people getting out. That's goal 1 and 2 in the right-hand column. But then it adds the 3 really important ones: marketable skills, and then student loan debt and job earnings. Now, let me put these in lay terms because this is really important. Goal number 3 is all about, is your degree relevant in the workplace? I don't know of a state that has a bolder notion of the value of higher ed. Here's what's cool about that. 86% of entering freshmen, no matter what level of higher ed, will tell you, I'm here in college or university today because I want a better job. 86%. So this factor is huge. The other 2, cost of attendance and return on student loan debt and job earnings are a ratio in this plan. This is genius because when you compare these 2, how much will I pay with what will I get back in earnings, you've developed the higher ed return on investment. What do I pay? What do I get back? This is groundbreaking. I don't know of a state that has the guts to do this like Texas has, and the beauty of it is this means all of higher ed can be considered and will be measured consistently in the years ahead based on this return on investment. So that's huge. Remember those notions as we go forward. Here's our current state of affairs in workforce in Texas. And depending on where you get the data, these pie slices might change a little bit, but generally speaking, here's what we know. Somewhere around 1/3 of the jobs in Texas require a bachelor's degree or greater. About 1/3. Ask most people and they'll tell you, oh no, it's much higher than that, but it's not true. The red slice you see here, those are the so-called middle skills. Now the bulk of those jobs require post-secondary ed like Rick and I do every day. It's got some form of college or you won't qualify for it. A high school diploma won't get you there. The other thing you'll see later is those are really well paid. And then the final sector is high school or less. Those are the what referred to as low-skill jobs. This is where a bulk of our unemployment is, by the way. So let's look at it from another angle. Same groups. Those top bars are the high skills jobs in Texas, and then the number of Texans who actually hold a credential of that level. So what you'll see is we actually have a pretty good supply of bachelor's degrees and higher. What we don't have is the right mix. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough STEM outcomes. We've got a bit too much of what you might call soft degrees, and that's where some of the unemployment or underemployment in this sector is. At the bottom is exactly what you'd expect. We have a lot of high school graduates and not enough jobs for them. That's a bunch of unemployment there. But the part that's really troublesome for our economy is the skills gap in the middle. There's a 14-point spread between the demand for these middle skills and the supply that's coming out of college in Texas today. Talk to your employers and ask them, can you find, oh, by the way, at TSDC we do underwater welding, but we use robots. So, you know, ask the oil companies, are you getting enough robotic underwater welders? Are you getting enough process ops technicians? Are you getting enough clean room guys? Are you, Rick's new wet lab is an example of those kind of jobs that make a ton of money for these people, but what you'll find is there's not enough kids getting in there, so we have a shortage. In addition to that, here's part of why we have a shortage today. Going back in the 80s, there were a bunch of factors that came together to cause the two-year sector in Texas to begin to turn their focus more toward academic offerings. There's a couple reasons why that might happen. You can see in this curve that back in the 80s, about half of the programs or classes taught in two-year schools in Texas were career and technical. Today, they're getting down toward the 25% range. Now, it's not because they've gotten smaller and smaller, it's because the academic has grown significantly faster. But because of this, we have this workforce shortage. Here's some of the reasons why. You know some of these. People think technical ed is a consolation prize, that they continue to see it as white collar and blue collar, which is another way of saying high class and low class. When the truth of the matter is, these jobs often pay better than bachelor's degrees. We also know that career and technical ed is expensive, isn't it, Rick? Holy cow, we could put sections and sections of academic classes in this room and teach kids English, math, all kinds of other things. But we can't teach diesel mechanics in here. And we can't teach air traffic control in here. And we can't teach the process operations in here. We have to have big labs with lots of lumpy objects that cost a lot of money, but the jobs that result from this are worth that investment. The Access for All movement is a worthy endeavor. We should continue to strive for access for all who want higher ed, but it morphed into university for all. And that went hand in glove with the stigmatization of the two-year credential, and particularly the technical ed credential. And it made it harder for families to choose that option. How would you feel if you were holding your baby or your grandbaby and you look at him and you say to yourself, I want Johnny to grow up to be a welder? Now, if that feels funny to you, then you are subject to that stigma. That if that felt like it shouldn't be so, then you are part of that soft bias against technical ed. So financial aid is another thing. The ease of financial aid means that students don't have to confront the cost of education until they're done. It's too late because they've already completed college, and if they picked a career path that doesn't give them a great return, they have a lot of debt and a little bit of yield, and it's too late there. So in a way, financial aid is both access, but it's a curse if we don't do a better job at the front end of showing people they can do CTE for a little bit of money and a great big job. So here's the earnings part, and I can pull these data out of BLS, I can pull these data out of the state economics office. No matter where I get the data, I always see it exactly the same. The part that's really interesting is when you look at the associate's degrees, bachelor's, and master's degrees. These are the quartiles of earnings in Texas by degree. So these are existent workforce by degree type. Check this out. See the yellow part? That's bound by the bottom of the bachelor's range and the top of the associate's degree. Look at it really carefully, and what you'll find is 9 out of 10 people with a bachelor's degree make the same amount of money as 9 out of 10 people with an associate's degree. And I've dived in these data. Here's what you'll find. If you want to be in the top of the bachelor's program, you better pick one that has at least 2 semesters of calculus. That's the differentiator. Because then you'll be in finance, accounting, engineering, logistics, some other kind of really rigorous field, and you'll make a lot of money with that bachelor's degree. If you want to make a lot of money with an associate's degree, study STEM fields, particularly engineering, industrial. So Texas is doing a bunch of things right. We have HB5, we have the JET grant, we've got Skills Development Fund. Rick's college and mine are big into those kind of areas. The Governor's Innovation Academies are really cool. The new technical early college high school grant was another winner. The P-Tech academies, which are just now coming out of the ground, are partnerships with industry and education. That's going to be a winner. And summer academies and many more. We're doing right things. But here's the policy considerations. Way too few students are electing for CTE. And our recruiters can't fix that problem. And the reason is, these kids make decisions based on what their peers are doing, who we can't control, what their family's biases might be about education, which we can't control, and also by what professional educators say to them, the counselors and the teachers and so forth. The counselor problem is really tough because the ratio in Texas is 400 kids for every one counselor. Those counselors don't have time to tell kids about the various options that are available. There has to be a state answer to letting families and kids know. Here's the cool part. Business will join with the state if you want to get that word out, because it's the employers who are hurting for the talent. The stigma has got to be fixed. The schools can't do that by ourselves. CTE is expensive. We're going to have to get more funding. I don't know how else to say it, but when you look at CTE in Texas, a third of all post-secondary CTE is done by 5 schools. TSTC and the 4 biggest community colleges. When you look at 52% of the CTE, that's only 10 schools. That leaves 40 colleges in Texas who are doing 1 or 2% of the training. You have to do it at scale, and scale takes money. Most but not all CTE programs return a high investment. An example, cosmetology, popular with kids, they like it. Culinary, popular with kids, they like it. But their earnings are close to minimum wage. Do you know what the average starting salary for a line worker from TSTC was last year? $85,000. These are the guys that climb the poles. The hurricane helped with that. Until the hurricane, it was 60, which is pretty good. Employers will participate with us if we have policy things. They want to join. If you talk to them, they'll tell you that. And then the final thing that I would say that Texas could benefit was, we have all these components that are all properly oriented, but they don't benefit from an alignment effort. From an effort in which we all say, okay, look, here's our really greatest needs. Here's where we could focus our effort the best. You take care of that part, I'll take care of this part. Gets us all aligned and working in the same direction, and we'll do a better job, more efficient use of public funds if we had that. So with that, I finished right on time, didn't I?
Thank you, Chancellor Reeser. And thank you for explaining in more detail how Texas 60x30 works and what TSTC is doing to help us to meet those goals. And as we move on to our next panelist, Dr. Rhodes, I'm sure we'll hear about how our community colleges are also helping to take part and help to contribute to closing the gap was the last plan, to help reach our 60x30 goals and to help to close that skills gap.
Okay. I'm up here because Trevor told me to come up here. But first of all, let me say that as Trevor was introducing the panelists, and he was talking about the skills that we don't have, I was afraid that he was going to say, instead of saying we're overqualified, I thought where he was headed is that we're failures.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Okay. So let me grab my glasses real quick. And tell you a little bit about, Mike did an excellent job of laying the foundation, the groundwork of 60x30 and why it is so important, and some of the actions that have been taken that are really well positioning Texas for the future. And thanks to the legislature, thanks to the coordinating board and the leadership from those entities, and we've got Fred Heldenfels here in the audience who, as the chair for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board a few years ago, helped to lead us in that direction of putting more emphasis and direction onto CTE. And so I want to say thank you to you. The mantra at Austin Community College really is innovation plus collaboration equals transformation. And, you know, saying that we've got to think about who are our partners and who do we have to rely on, and how can we make the best use of taxpayer money by leveraging each other's resources and forming strong partnerships. And so I'm going to walk through some of those as I talk about ACC and what we've been doing. Number one, guided pathways for community colleges is kind of the key word, the key phrases around the nation today, because historically community colleges have been all about access, 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 and not necessarily helping students find a good career pathway and staying to it. And not, you know, what ended up happening is student takes a lot of courses, some that apply towards the degree and some that don't. And so they waste time and money in doing that. So guided pathways is what we're focused on right now. And we have identified 10 areas, what we call areas of study. We have collaborated with the K-12 districts to say, okay, you've got your endorsements, we've got our career pathways, and let's align those. And so that's step number one. Step two is we've got university partners, because some of the students want to go directly into the workforce. Some of the students do want to go on and get a bachelor's degree and higher. And so it is important, it's critical for us in education to make sure we have a seamless alignment, K-12 through the community college into the university, and to try to eliminate and minimize the numbers of excess credit hours that students will take. Because when Mike was talking about student loan debt as a part of 60 by 30, that is one of the biggest national problems we have today, is student loan debt. So how can we work more consciously to reduce that? So we're moving from that cafeteria style where students come to community college and just kind of pick and choose courses, and like I say, some apply and some don't, to very intentional, informed career pathways. And leading them in the right direction so that they know what's going to apply and what doesn't. We're focused more on completion than we are just getting them in the front door. But what happens to them once they get in that front door? What do we do with them? How do we help them become successful and earn a living wage? So direction towards competency-based is another area that we're working on, because it's not just good enough to take a course and pass that course, but what are the competencies that you gained through that course that are going to add to the success when you get into the workplace? And so we're spending a lot of time on changing our courses into competency-based units. And with that, it means more individualized instruction with wraparound services to help students be successful. So at ACC, we have created what we call the Accelerator. It's 604 computer stations, individualized with wraparound services of tutors and faculty, helping students work through it as fast as they can. And you might say, why is that so important? It's important because a lot of students come to us with competencies that they already have, either through the military, or in some cases, a few years back, they got a bachelor's degree, or they took some higher ed courses, or they learned it while they were in high school. And we need to assess them and give them credit for their competency and let them move on to the next one as quickly as possible. So competency-based is incredibly important to us. Accelerated programmer training is a good example of that. Our computer programming 2-year degree, we completely converted to competency-based. And it allows, and what we're finding, the students who are attracted to that right off the bat are those who are veterans who have exited the military, and they have a lot of those skill sets. They can come into the program, assess out of those competencies, and get on with it and graduate early and go into the workforce as quickly as possible. The same is true with a lot of students that we have who have attained a bachelor's degree, but in a field where there's not good employment. And so we're seeing a high increase in the numbers of students who are coming to ACC who already have a bachelor's degree, but they want a specific skill set that the industry is requiring. And that's where they're coming. So another area is focus on the workforce needs of Central Texas. So we partnered with Workforce Solutions, our workforce board in Central Texas, and have come up with the Austin Metro Area Master Community Workforce Plan that identifies three major areas that we are going to focus on, which is IT, it is the health careers, and it is also advanced manufacturing and skilled trades. That is where the employers are telling us we need bodies right now who have the right skill sets. So we're working on that at ACC. I've just hired a new vice president for business and industry partnerships. And that is to make sure, because one of the weaknesses when you live in a community where it's 2.4, 2.6% unemployment, basically everybody's working, but many of those individuals are underemployed and they're working 2 jobs, but they can't afford to quit and go back to school. So how do we help them? And one of the ways to assist them is through paid internships that add relevance to the coursework that they want to follow. Not just a job that they get paid for, but something that adds relevance to the classroom experience. So we have, through this, we are putting together 3 different councils, an IT council, a health careers council, and advanced manufacturing skilled trades council. So we can get the feedback from employers to say, here are our pain points. We cannot find individuals that have this specific skill set. And then we take that and we say, okay, how do we convert that so that we can give them the marketable skills as quickly as possible? And I'll give you a quick example too. I sat on a roundtable discussion about 2 weeks ago with some HR individuals and CEOs from local companies in the Central Texas area, mainly in IT and advanced manufacturing. And I wanted to listen to them and get feedback as to what are their needs and where do we need to go with this. And basically what they're saying, we have such high demand, such high needs right now. Can higher education think about flipping the delivery of your education to where you can offer the specific skill sets first and then get them employed, stackable credentials, get them employed, living wage, and you can always add on later the history and the English and some of the other subjects so that they will qualify later to be managers, supervisors, but can you just give us those that have the specific skill sets we need right now? So that's what we're working on. Customized training. Mike was talking about skills development grants, and that is working with business and industry to give incumbent workers exactly the updated skills necessary to be successful to continue their job. K-12 alignment is critical, and we've got one of the Board of Trustee members from one of our great partners, AISD, Austin Independent School District, Ann Teich back here, that, we rely on great partnerships with our school districts. AISD, I will tell you, is a fantastic partner. We have, at ACC, I think we have 11 early college high schools today. We have 3 innovative academies. 2 of those innovative academies are with AISD. The great thing about an innovative academy that has come out of the legislature, along with PTEX, is that we have an industry partner for each one of those academies. And so for the 2 with AISD, one focuses on IT, and so the industry partner with that is Dell Computers. And what the industry partner agrees to provide in this relationship is they will provide mentors, job shadowing opportunities, and paid internships between their junior and senior year. The other one that we have is with Seton Hospitals in the health careers professions. Same thing, gives them relevance as they're working through their coursework at the high school is so important. So we have early college high schools, we have dual credit in the high schools, we have over 6,000 students who are taking dual credit through Austin Community College today. And prior to House Bill 5, most of the dual credit that we delivered was in the core courses. It had nothing to do with CTE. Post House Bill 5, a lot more of the courses that are coming out are CTE, and so they are adding relevance to what the students are learning. And I can't reinforce the importance of some of the CTE programs that take place in our high schools, and we have great partnerships, but I will use my son as an example. Today he is an engineer with NASA in Houston, and he was a good math student when he was in junior high school and high school, but he never saw the relevance to mathematics to the workforce until in high school he took an automotive trades class. And in that class he got so excited because all of a sudden this hands-on experience and what he learned in his math classes began to take shape. So much so that he ended up going to University of Texas at Austin, majored in mechanical engineering, got a free ride to MIT to get a master's degree in astronautical engineering, and now works for NASA Space Center. And he is every kid's dream job, spacesuit design engineer. So I talked about our partners, the ISDs, but we also have strong relationships and partnerships with the universities because a lot of our students need to get the right experiences, skill sets necessary to be successful to go on and get a bachelor's degree. And so we have co-enrollment programs. It started with the University of Texas at Austin. So we have students who are in the top 10% but were not admitted to UT Austin who come to ACC, and they will take their first year with us with a guarantee that if they have a certain GPA, they're guaranteed admission to UT Austin. The next year we did that with Texas State University, but it's not the top 10. It is really students who need some additional assistance in developmental work before they're ready to take the rigor of upper division level courses. And then just this year, Fred will be happy to hear this. I'm a Longhorn. As a Longhorn, it's very hard for us to enter into this agreement with Texas A&M University, but we did. And it is for engineering majors. So students who want to major in engineering can be co-enrolled at Austin Community College and take their pre-engineering degree with a guarantee that if they graduate with a 3.0 GPA, they are automatically admitted to the College of Engineering at Texas A&M. If they have a 3.5, major of choice at Texas A&M, which is astounding. So thank you, Fred, for you and your Aggie buddies. The last two that I'll mention is business incubators. Mike had talked about the wet lab space that ACC has. We're the only one in the state that has wet lab space as a community college. It is fantastic because it gives our students who are majoring in biotech the opportunity to work hand in hand as paid interns with companies that are producing product and before it goes to market. So they're testing product before market. We just entered into an agreement with the city of Austin for a fashion incubator that will be located at the Highland campus. And so same thing, experience to students while they're working through the curriculum so that they are prepared for the workforce. So I hope what you can see is community colleges, TSTC, we are focused, laser focused on career preparation for students to meet the needs of business and industry, but it relies heavily on strong partnerships together with other entities, business and industry, K-12, universities, nonprofits, all working together with the same goal. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rhodes, and Thanks for keeping the choreography on point. Apologies for not inviting you to the podium, Chancellor Reeser. Before we move on to Representative Johnson, I just want to say, make one more comment on the representative. Now, y'all have heard Chancellor Reeser, Dr. Rhodes both mention the importance of CTE efforts that partner with K-12, whether it's preparing guidance counselors to have the right information, whether it's actual CTE curricula at the K-12 level. And there's such a deficit in infrastructure compared to the pipeline that we know exists from pre-AP through AP, through the use of those AP scores to move into four-year universities. There's such a well-defined track and metrics that these instructors can point to that just doesn't exist in many cases for CTE instructors. And that's why it was so promising and why TPPF can't say enough good about HB 374, authored by Representative Johnson this past session, that instituted a massive reorganization of the information that's provided by the Workforce Commission and the Texas Education Agency to individual school districts on topics ranging from and resources ranging from curriculum design, from preparation for the instructors that eventually need to teach that curriculum, for organizations and opportunities for students at the high school level to have internships and high school level apprenticeships that could match the sorts of opportunities and preparation that students that are looking to go on to 4 years have. And that's the House version of a Senate bill that then eventually passed unanimously in the Senate and by 141 votes to 4 votes in the House, implemented this past September, and that's going to be such a tremendous resource for our K-12 educators in helping to close that infrastructure gap between the CTE students and students that are looking to go on to 4 years. And so with that, please help me welcome to the podium Representative Johnson.
Thank you. You could have started my time with Trevor being up here. I'm not going to talk that long, so that would be okay. It is a pleasure to be here. I've already texted my staff and have kind of gone wild on them because this is one of those times when it said last but not least. Well, that's applicable here because I'm sitting up here with 2 doctors, and I don't understand how I'm sitting up with 2 PhDs on a panel. So what I'm going to say is going to be in layman's terms. We're going to put it in dumb people terms, and I'm going to tell you how it is, because I didn't understand much of what they were saying, because that was just too much brilliance. So hopefully you guys can understand the things that I'm saying. Rep. Wilson, that wasn't you who voted against my bill, was it? You wasn't one of those 4, were you? No, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. Just teasing. Well, it is a pleasure to be here. One of the things that I do know is that giving children hope is just the start of the beginning of a successful life. You gotta have hope. I was 22 years old, and I ran an after-school program called Phoenix Outreach Youth Center in the 5th Ward portion of Houston, Texas, which was a underserved, very impoverished community. A lot of the children came from broken homes and did not have much direction. The children that came to my program oftentimes were failing students. But in a very short period of time, we turned that around. We started putting more emphasis in giving the children more time after school to study, but we also gave them more time to express themselves, to find out what were their desires, to find out what they wanted to do. And oftentimes we came back to, I don't know. I don't know. Many times somebody would tell me they wanted to be a veterinarian. And I remember a girl named Rochelle Henry, and she said, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I said, ooh, you want to stick your finger in a dog's butt? And she was like, no. I said, well, that's what veterinarians do. But it just sounded good to her. Somebody else said they wanted to be a heart surgeon. And I was like, oh my God, I can't stand blood. You know, it's just, blood is everywhere. Just you being graphic with them all of a sudden, it's like, that's not what I wanted to do, because they had heard all the time, as long as you said something, then you're winning. And so the children would simply make up things. And so I'd always tell, I started learning a long time ago that children will be what they see. They're gonna be what they see. And if they see negativity every single day, and they see impoverishment, they see, no matter what we're trying to teach in school, what they see is what they're going to be. So that's when I learned to start taking my children out of the environment by which they lived every single day. Because what you saw every single day is, if that was your world, then you never knew that there was better and more opportunities for you to do better and more. And so I started taking them around and seeing places. I brought them to Austin. I took them to Dallas. I took them to San Antonio. We started touring the country. We went from New York to California. I even took a group to Africa, because the whole thing about it is I wanted these children to see opportunity to do something great with their life, but not just simply their own little world. And that's simply what's happening. We're putting children in boxes in schools and telling them this is what you have to do. You got to go to college. You got to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful. And that's what's being told. I graduated from the Chinquapin School in Baytown, Texas, Highland, Texas. The requirement for graduation was that you had to have applied and be accepted into college. And so, of course, I mean, 30 years, good Lord, it's 30 years already? Oh, man, so 30 years ago, I mean, obviously that's what we were told. You know, my mother told me it's not if, it's when. It's not if you're going to college, it's when you're going to college. And so the idea was we had to go to college. I had an opportunity, and one of the kids that were in my class, and my graduating class had one of the highest SAT scores in the entire state of Texas in my graduating class. I think the SAT score at that time was about 1,400. I screwed up the curve. I'm telling you, I messed up the average. But the fact is that, and there was only 18 of us, so you didn't have a whole lot of people messing it up. But the fact is that there was one kid in particular that graduated, one of the smartest kids that I knew. Had one of the highest SATs, 4.0 student, went off to college and dropped out. And I lost touch with him, hadn't seen him for a while, and we kind of bumped into each other because I needed a plumber. And lo and behold, Kerry shows up. And I was like, he was like, man, it's Jarvis, that's my best friend in school. And I'm like, Kerry, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm a plumber now. I said, a plumber? Wow. You know, he says, what do you do? I said, well, you know, I'm a city council member, and, you know, I'm important and everything. And so we made connection, and he fixed my plumbing work, and he gave me the bill. I said, oh, man, I appreciate the love you're showing me, but, you know, look, this is what you do. Let me charge me full price, man. I have a degree. I'm in college. You know, I've been to college. I'm a city council member. And so he said, no, I said, no, I'm just, and he gave me the bill, and I said, well, can we be friends again? Because, my God, let's just be friends, okay? But and so I was like, wow, is this what plumbers make? I mean, man, you were only out here for about 2 hours, man, and I just don't understand. I don't pay my attorney that much. Our friendship stayed together. I went over to his house, and I was like, I think I'm going to quit city council. I'm going to find me a way, because this had a massive, beautiful home. The fact that he had pants that never fit, and his crack was always showing, there was no consequence to the fact that, and I realized why his pants was always hanging, because his wallet was so heavy because he was charging so much. You know, so at the end of the day, this whole notion about you have to go to college is just simply not the way to go. We have to be able to encourage children and make them understand that there are so many more opportunities for you. And then when you look at the community by which I grew up, and the community by which many of the children that I tried to educate and get on the right path, they wanted them to all go to college. I mean, the fact is that when you look at the test scores, and when you look at how they're going to pay for it, and when you look at, you know, nobody in the family has ever been, and I'm not discouraging it, but the fact is that let's look at the school system itself. In one particular school, this failing school in HISD, and we're dealing with it today, this failing school has been IR, which is just bad. But the fact is that they've been on that path for 8 years. And during those 8 years, they're blaming everybody. They're blaming the children, they're blaming the teachers, the ISD, they're pointing the finger, and the school is pointing the finger, and the parents are pointing the finger. But the fact is that there was one graduating class, I think 3 years ago. That graduating class never, ever had a certified math teacher. Since the time they were in elementary all the way to graduate from high school, never had a certified math teacher. So was it the children that failed, or was it a system that failed the children? And then they told the children that you have to go to college. That's the only way you're going to be successful. And so the fact is that many of the children that graduate in my district, in District 139, only less than 30% of the children end up going to college. So the question is where are the other 70% going? Only a very small percentage are actually going to the military, but everybody else is trying to go into a workforce where they're simply making minimum wage, and oftentimes are stuck in that same minimum wage job for many, many, many years. Then they try to raise a family on that same minimum wage job, whatever, having to get the skills. And so that was one of the biggest reasons why I tackled this, the notion and the bill of creating CTE and bringing vocational ed back to our schools, because I understood that children needed a pathway and a career path to success. And we can't always make them feel inadequate simply because it doesn't look good, or it doesn't look like it's elitist. And that's what we're teaching our children in society these days, and that's what we have to stop. Because when you start telling children, this is what you can have, because that's what we say. When you get a degree, this is what you can have. You can have this. Well, I took my own children. I took my own children to Carrie's house and said, this is what you can have if you ever decide that you don't want to go to college and be a plumber. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And so I use that often, that we tell children all the time to go to college so you can make more money. Unfortunately, we don't say go to college so you can learn more or be more intellectual. We say we go to college to make more money. And so, but the good doctors up here have already told you, there's a lot of money out there to be made. The regular college degrees are paying the same. I talked that long? It went fast. So, so the idea behind what I'm trying to do and what we're going to continue to do is to make sure that children are given an opportunity to be put on a career path. Because if they see that there is a finish line, if they see that there is an opportunity, then you will find that they will start to walk that path. They'll start to walk down that road, as opposed to, I'm not going nowhere after this anyway. I mean, forget it. And so those same children that know they're not going to college, and they know that there's nothing else out there for them, those are the children that then get involved in criminal activity, because they can't raise their family on $7.25. They can't they can't live a lifestyle that is respectful even to themselves on $7.25, and then they're trying to raise a family. But when you start in the 9th grade and you start looking at the industry, that's what my bill does. It looks at the industry in those communities by which you may be. And we're saying where the jobs are going to be, and we're going to build CTE around that to simply say, get on this career path. So at least when you leave from high school, you've got some skills, and whether you want to go to college, or whether you want to go into an apprenticeship program, or whether you want to continue in the vocational ed that you're in, that at least gives you options. And wouldn't we all love to have options in life? And that's what it's all about with this bill and vocational ed. So with that, I'll put a pin in it, and thank you guys for allowing me to be here today.
One last round of applause, please, everybody. Join me for all of our panelists here. We're now going to take this last 15 minutes that we have together for some Q&A. I just want to quickly lay down a couple of ground rules so we can get on to y'all's questions. I just want to establish that the questions that we're asking isn't so much to establish a dialogue between our audience and our panelists. We're finishing up hearing what our panelists have to say. The questions are just the starting point for the continuation of that conversation. So please, if you could phrase your questions just as questions without any kind of statements or accompanying information. Michelle at the back of the room is going to hand you the microphone. Our panelists aren't going to begin answering the question until you've returned to the microphone to Michelle, and please do not join the conversation if you're not holding the microphone. As far as follow-up questions go, if everyone who has their first question has had an opportunity to ask, then we'll go around, and if people have follow-up questions, can ask those. So with those ground rules set, who would like to have our first question?
This is so wonderful. I'm glad I've lived to see this day has started in Texas. However, the 70% that Representative Johnson talked about that nobody knew where they went to, there's a group in our population that need, they're past school, that need to be some kind of training skill. Have y'all had a chance to address that section? There's also people in jail or coming out of jail that need to be re-educated or develop some skills. Am I making any sense? Have y'all thought about that segment of the population?
One of the things that we are working on, I'll work on in the next legislative session, is dealing with, number one, expungement. Expungement is important for individuals who are incarcerated. Because the fact is that you did a crime, you did your time, and now you have to become a productive member of society. But oftentimes when the crime is committed, that crime is then following them the rest of their days because no one wants to give them a chance because you got a label over you. But I mean, if any of us are, without sin, if anybody in this room is without some fault, and the fact is that many of us in this room just didn't get caught. Okay? I mean, I don't care how you whether it was your taxes, whether it was, hey, I went too many miles over the speed limit, and which led me to, you wouldn't believe the number of people that, because of a speeding ticket, found their way into the prison system. But the fact is, expungement is important. But one of the things that you have to do before the expungement is given, because in the state of Texas, we're one of the most difficult states to get expungement done. You have to get your skills up while in prison. I'm promoting that in order for you to get the expungement, number one, do you have a high school diploma? Did you get one when you were in the system? Did you take training courses? Did you do the things that are available to you to demonstrate to me that you want to become a productive member of society? Because just serving your time and then you're coming out, hey, you haven't demonstrated to me that because otherwise you're going to be right back where you are. So those are things that I hope to address in the next legislative session.
For our next question?
Yes, how are the real higher education, the four-year colleges accepting this plan?
I think it's troublesome for any of us to answer on behalf of the universities. I can't tell you that, I lead a 2-year college system, and Rick does too. All of my career's been in 2-year education. I'm not sure we're qualified to speak on behalf of the universities.
If I may try, those universities are not impacted anyway because the children who are going to the CTE wasn't going to go to the 4-year institution anyway. And so we're creating an avenue or a lane for those children or for those young men and women to be able to get on a career path. And so the universities should embrace it. If you're smart enough, you would know, I want money placed in these types of programs because, again, this type of program deters crime. A person with a job is a little less likely to be involved in criminal activity. And so, again, giving someone a job, you're giving them hope. You're giving them opportunity. They don't want to throw that away. So I don't think universities are impacted by this in the least, my opinion.
Yeah. I would also say that, our experience is some of the universities are embracing this because they understand and they're hearing from the same employers that we're hearing from. And I will give you an example. There are some universities that are now awarding Bachelor of Applied Science or Bachelor of Applied Technology. And what that really is it's taking somebody who has graduated from one of our CTE programs, and they've got the associate degree, maybe in welding or something like that, and then this person wants to be an entrepreneur and go into business for themselves or be a plumber, but they also want to work for a company, or they want to gain the skill sets necessary to be a manager. And so they'll get the next 2 years that kind of focuses on the management aspects of being successful either as an entrepreneur or in a business that they work for. And so I would say, we're seeing very encouraging signs from universities saying, yes, we respect the associate degree that's in a CTE program, and let us help add on to that.
I'll tell you, I will offer this conjecture, if you don't mind. In goal number 4, where this plan is going to compare student loan debt to your first year earnings, the most troublesome, if I were a university president, what I would be most concerned about is some of my degrees that don't result in outstanding earnings early in the careers. And I'll give you, for instance, if I were a very expensive university graduating primary education teachers, I can tell you my wife is a K-12 educator, and I know what she makes, which is not very much. You compare how much it would take to get that degree and the student loan debt associated with those first-year earnings, and we're going to have some real trouble, if I were a university president, in some fields like sociology, some of the liberal arts, education, and some other fields. That'll be exacerbated if people are in fields that are low-paying but require master's degrees or higher. And the example is a high school counselor. High school counselors are not particularly well paid, but they require a master's degree to do their work. And a bunch of on-the-job training. So the goal number 4 in the plan will be troublesome for those schools.
The question is, first of all, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic for anybody that doesn't want to go to college. But my question is, I went to my wife's hometown called Sulphur Springs, Texas, in East Texas. Walked into this place, TV thing, talked to the young lady. Her and her husband were about 19. And I said, well, fantastic, what are you doing? We just got married. I'm here learning to be an office manager. And he is working for a company to become an air-conditioned technician of some sort. And I said, well, that is fantastic. That's the capitalistic idea. She says, but that's not the way most of my friends think. In low-income areas and high-income areas, there's a mindset in the culture that says, you don't got to do anything. And when I was back on a school board in Dallas, things like that, we had confluence of cultures where we took people out of poverty areas or projects and then put them in so that get a chance to see how you can live, that you don't have to accept, like what you're pointing out, this is the way it is. But if you don't want, you can go until they see it or feel it. So what are we doing in the legislature or anywhere or in college to get these kids to have an opportunity who've not seen it to possibly experience it? Or do you have any ideas?
Well, I don't know if we can, and I don't know if it's the legislature's responsibility to go into people's personal lives and make them do certain things. But I think the opportunity is certainly where it's at. But I think it starts. I mean, I don't want to go too far into this as how we got to this problem. because we got to this problem. But, and I'm gonna shock a whole lot of you, we got to this problem from integration. It's gonna shock a whole lot of people, like, what are you talking about? Because at the end, I'm gonna tell you this. In the 60s and 50s, 60s, and in that time, the issue was there was competition in the black community. There was competition because you had lawyers and doctors and engineers living in the same neighborhood as street walkers, street pushers, and dope dealers, and and all of those children went to the same school. And those teachers had to teach to the level of the lawyers, the doctors, and the engineers, and the pharmacists. They didn't teach down to the drug users and the drug dealers. They didn't teach down. They taught up to those children. So those children got the same quality education as that lawyer and that doctor. Now, when integration happened, and when you had the money, you could flee and go to another part of the neighborhood, another part of the city or state, wherever the case may be. Then you started seeing when you took all of the talent and all of the money and all of the resources out of that neighborhood, and you left those who did not have. And so then the idea had to be, well, we got to teach down to these students. Because again, those same students used to see lawyers and doctors every single day. But now the only thing they see is what they live with every single day. And oftentimes they're not being afforded an opportunity to see other things. So there are programs like mine, an after-school program that has to do that type of work. I mean, you have to go into the communities to try to figure out how do you, the church-based organizations and the fraternities and the sororities and the after-school programs, that's the job. But I always said when I was running that after-school program, my job was to work my way out of a job. I wanted to work diligently to where my program was no longer needed, because I understood it's not just about educating this child, it's about fixing that parent. I got to fix the parent before I can fix the child. Because I was telling you, every day they would be with me Monday through Friday, and man, they were great. Well, actually, they were great Tuesday to Friday, because when they would come back to me on Monday, it was like, what happened? Geez, I mean, it was, there was no schedule. They stayed up all night. They just did what they wanted. But through the week, they understood this is the schedule. And that's what so I don't know if we want to get into that, Representative Workman, you may not want to get into that personal stuff. I know that, and I apologize for not acknowledging you at first. And my glasses, I don't have them on, so, but I do appreciate the work that we were able to do. This is one of the few R's that I can talk to and know that we can kind of put aside our D's and R's to deal with people's issues. So, and that's always good that we can do that. But that's my take on that.
All righty, and we have time for just a quick question, and then I think we have that. All righty.
Thanks. What role, if any, do you see for-profit career colleges fitting in 60 by 30?
So this could be a challenge. If you look at the national numbers, about 10% of all students in America are in a for-profit college. But for-profit students account for 25% of the student loan defaults. And which is troublesome. Well, no, wait, let me get my numbers right. 25% of the outstanding student loan debt is held by those 10% of the students. And then 30% of the defaults are by students who have attended proprietary schools. There are good ones, and there are some who contribute to this problem. So what I would say is you can't apply a blanket metric on this, but what you can do is say there are some proprietaries who do a good job. I think the consumer needs to do their homework and see who is this a school that does it right or not? Because regretfully, too many don't.
And unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions. That'll conclude the panel. I want to thank our panelists on behalf of TPPF, and then I also want to thank all of you on behalf of our panelists and TPPF for taking part in a conversation that's very dear to all of us
We
up
can
here.
thank Trevor, too, for a great moderation job.